There is a stretch of land in southern Nevada, flat, dry, surrounded by mountains, where the sky above is legally off-limits. Not just restricted, off-limits. Where that airspace begins, where it ends, those coordinates are classified. The land below it does not appear on most civilian maps. For decades, it did not appear on any government map. When senators asked about it in closed session briefings, they were sometimes told, "That's not something we can discuss today." Something exists out there. That much has never been in doubt. What it is, or was, or continues to be, that is where the certainty ends. In 2013, a historian submitted a Freedom of Information Act request. He was not looking for aliens, he was looking for routine administrative records, budget lines, project codes, site names. What came back was a stack of pages, most of them redacted, with a short reference buried on page 407 of a CIA internal history document. It named the facility. It was the first time the United States government had officially acknowledged, in writing for the public record, that the place existed at all. The place was called Area 51. And the question that followed that acknowledgement was the same question people had been asking for 60 years. If the only thing here was test aircraft, if there was nothing unusual, nothing extraordinary, nothing worth hiding, then why did it take 60 years to say so? That question has never been fully answered. This is not a story about aliens, but it is a story about a place that went to extraordinary lengths to make sure you would never stop wondering. Let's start with what the documents actually say. Area 51 is the informal name for a highly classified United States Air Force installation located within the Nevada Test and Training Range, approximately 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas. Its official designation has changed several times over the decades. It has been called Watertown, Paradise Ranch, The Ranch, and Homey Airport.
The installation sits on the southern shore of Groom Lake, a dry lake bed at an elevation of roughly 4,400 feet above sea level. It was established in the mid-1950s. The purpose, according to declassified CIA documents, was specific: a remote, secure location to develop and test experimental aircraft that the United States did not want the Soviet Union to know about. The first major program was the Lockheed U-2. The U-2 was a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft designed to fly above Soviet radar detection systems and photograph military installations deep inside Soviet territory. It could cruise at altitudes above 70,000 feet, significantly higher than any commercial aircraft of the era, and well above what most military aircraft of the time could reach. When it flew over Nevada during test operations in the 1950s, civilian pilots and air traffic controllers saw something they had never seen before. An aircraft, clearly an aircraft, flying at altitudes that no known aircraft could reach, gleaming fast and silent from the ground. They reported what they saw. They were told, officially, that they had seen weather balloons. After the U-2 came the A-12, the predecessor to the SR-71 Blackbird. The SR-71, which entered service with the Air Force in the 1960s, was, for decades, the fastest air-breathing aircraft ever built. It could fly at over Mach 3, at altitudes exceeding 85,000 feet. It could outrun surface-to-air missiles. Both aircraft were designed at Area 51. Both were tested there. Then came the F-117 Nighthawk, the first operational stealth aircraft, with an angular, faceted design that looked unlike anything that had ever flown. It was developed in total secrecy through the late 1970s and early 1980s. The Air Force publicly denied its existence until 1988. These programs explain a significant portion of the UFO sightings reported over Nevada between the 1950s and the 1980s.
The CIA itself, in a 1998 study, estimated that over half of all UFO reports from that period could be attributed to sightings of classified aircraft, specifically the U-2 and the SR-71. The secrecy, according to every official explanation offered since 2013, was about military advantage. It was about keeping advanced technology out of Soviet intelligence reports. It was about protecting programs that were, by any measure, extraordinarily sensitive. That is the confirmed version. Those are the facts on the record. But records, by definition, only contain what was written down. The official explanation is coherent. It is internally consistent. And yet, there are details that sit at the edges of that explanation. Details that are harder to fit into the frame. Consider the geography. Area 51 is not just restricted. It is restricted in a way that has no obvious precedent in United States military history. The restricted airspace above it, known as R4808N, covers approximately 23 miles by 25 miles. At its upper boundary, the restriction extends to unlimited altitude. Unlimited altitude. For comparison, classified military bases across the United States typically restrict airspace to a few thousand feet. The restricted airspace around the White House extends approximately 18 miles in radius to an altitude of 18,000 feet. Area 51's airspace restriction is categorically different in scale. The ground perimeter is similarly unusual. The boundary is not marked by a fence. It is marked by orange posts and signs. Signs that say, in plain language, that the use of deadly force is authorized. Camouflage uniformed guards in unmarked vehicles patrol a buffer zone that extends miles beyond the posted boundary. In some areas, motion sensors and cameras have been documented by journalists and researchers who observed from adjacent public land. None of this is unusual for a classified facility, you might say, and you would be partly right. But consider the timeline.
The U-2 program was declassified in 1998. The F-117 was publicly acknowledged in 1988. The SR-71 was retired in 1990. The Cold War ended in 1991. The aircraft that supposedly explained the need for secrecy have been in museums for decades. And yet, the security protocols at Area 51 did not diminish when those programs became public knowledge. The restricted airspace did not shrink. The buffer zone patrols did not stop. The level of operational security around the base remained, and by some accounts, intensified, after the programs that justified it were no longer secret. There is also the matter of what former workers have said. Several individuals who worked at Groom Lake under classified contracts have spoken on record, after obtaining legal clearances to do so, about programs and projects that went beyond aircraft testing. They described seeing things they were not supposed to see. They described being told, explicitly, that certain areas of the facility were off-limits even to cleared personnel. They described compartmentalization so strict that entire buildings were unknown to workers in adjacent buildings. None of these accounts, on their own, constitutes evidence of anything specific. Compartmentalization is standard practice in classified programs. Not every cleared employee has access to every program. But there is one name that comes up repeatedly in discussions of Area 51 anomalies, and it deserves to be addressed carefully. Bob Lazar. In 1989, a man who claimed to be a physicist and former government contractor appeared on a Nevada television station. He said he had worked at a site near Area 51, a location he called S4, where he had been employed to reverse engineer extraterrestrial spacecraft. His claims were specific. He named the element 115 as the fuel source. He described craft that used gravity wave propulsion. He described biological material. He described security protocols. Most of his credentials have never been verified. Educational institutions he claimed to have attended have no record of him. Former colleagues from the alleged program have never come forward. And yet, element 115, which Lazar described in 1989, was synthesized and confirmed by scientists in 2003, 14 years after his appearance. That detail has never been satisfactorily explained. It does not prove his story. It does not confirm anything. But it does not fit neatly into the official explanation either. It is worth being precise here about what this section is, and what it is not. What follows are theories. They are not facts. They are not claims. They are the documented beliefs of specific groups of people, presented because understanding why people believe them is part of understanding Area 51 itself. The most persistent theory is the simplest. That the United States government recovered extraterrestrial technology at some point in the mid-20th century, and that Area 51 is where that technology was, or is, being studied. The origin point for this theory, for most people who hold it, is Roswell, New Mexico, July 1947. Something crashed in the desert near Roswell. That much is not in dispute. The initial press release from the Army Air Force Base at Roswell described a recovered flying disc. That press release was issued by the base's public information officer, following communication with the base commander. Within 24 hours, that press release was retracted. The Army issued a correction. What had been recovered was a weather balloon. Years later, the Air Force issued another explanation. The debris was from Project Mogul, a classified program to monitor Soviet nuclear tests using high-altitude balloon arrays. The official story changed twice. That fact, whatever explanation you accept, is documented.
Some researchers and former military personnel have claimed over the years that material from Roswell, possibly including non-human biological material, was transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio and later to facilities in Nevada. Area 51, in this theory, is not primarily an aircraft testing facility. It is a reverse engineering program, an attempt to understand technology that did not originate on Earth. No physical evidence for this theory has ever been publicly presented. There is also a separate category of theory, less about aliens, more about deception. Some people believe that certain famous imagery associated with human achievement was fabricated, and that Area 51 played a role in that fabrication. The most prominent version of this theory holds that the footage of the Apollo 11 moon landing, specifically the footage of the first moonwalk on July 20th, 1969, was staged. It is sometimes suggested that the director Stanley Kubrick, who had produced the film 2001, A Space Odyssey in 1968, a film notable for its realistic depictions of space, was recruited by NASA or by government agencies to produce backup footage of the landing in the event that the actual mission failed or that the transmitted footage was unusable. The evidence offered for this theory is primarily visual. Analysis of lighting, shadow direction, and movement in the footage, which some claim are inconsistent with conditions on the lunar surface. NASA scientists, physicists, and independent film analysts have examined these claims in detail. The consensus among those researchers is that the footage is consistent with lunar conditions. Kubrick never confirmed any involvement with government film production during his lifetime. His family has denied it. The theory persists. It has been sustained, in part, by the genuine difficulty of proving a negative.
and by the psychological weight of the Cold War context in which the space program operated.
There is one more category worth mentioning, and it is perhaps the least discussed, but in some ways the most interesting. Some researchers do not believe Area 51 houses alien technology. They believe it is, or was, being used to develop technologies so advanced that they would appear alien to the general public. Plasma weapons, directed energy systems, craft that use propulsion principles not publicly disclosed. In this version, there are no extraterrestrials. There is only technology, American technology, that is decades ahead of what has been officially acknowledged. And the alien story, in this reading, is not an embarrassment to the government. It is useful. It is the cover story. For every anomaly raised in this investigation, there are rational explanations. That is worth stating clearly. The restricted airspace is large because testing aircraft at speeds above Mach 3 requires large amounts of controlled airspace. An SR-71 traveling at full speed covers miles in seconds. A test corridor for aircraft of that performance requires room, significant room. The security protocols have not diminished since the Cold War because the facility is still active. Not active in the sense of testing 1960s-era reconnaissance planes. Active in the sense that the United States military continues to develop classified aircraft. The F-22 Raptor and the B-2 Spirit were tested at Groom Lake. The RQ-170 Sentinel, an unmanned reconnaissance aircraft, was operated from there. Programs that have not been publicly disclosed are, by definition, unknown, which means the existence of ongoing classified aviation work is not a theory. It is a near certainty. The element 115 detail in Bob Lazar's account is frequently cited as the most difficult to explain. But there is a counter-argument. Element 115, oganesson, was not yet synthesized, but heavier transuranic elements were a known area of theoretical physics research.
A person with access to advanced research environments, or with a strong background in nuclear physics literature, might have been aware of theoretical work on heavy elements. The synthesis in 2003 confirmed the element's existence. It did not confirm any of the properties Lazar attributed to it, specifically its role as an exotic propulsion fuel. No peer-reviewed research has supported that specific claim. The Roswell incident has a documented explanation, Project Mogul, that accounts for the physical debris. The materials used in Mogul balloon arrays were unusual. Reflective foil, reinforced neoprene, balsa wood struts. To someone unfamiliar with the program, the wreckage might have appeared genuinely unusual. The biological material described by some witnesses, small bodies recovered near the crash site, has been attributed in Air Force investigations to crash test dummies used in high-altitude parachute experiments. The timing of those drops and the location of the Roswell crash do not perfectly align. But the Air Force position is that witness memories of separate events were conflated over years of retelling. The Apollo moon landing footage has been analyzed by optical physicists, cinematographers, and aerospace engineers. The specific anomalies claimed by the staging theorists, shadow directions, flag movement, the quality of the footage, have been addressed in peer-reviewed papers. The physics of the lunar environment, including the behavior of light with no atmosphere to scatter it, account for what appears to Earth-conditioned eyes as unusual shadow behavior. The flag moved because it was planted with rotational force, and in the absence of air resistance, that motion continued longer than it would on Earth. None of this makes the questions go away. Rational explanations exist, but the recurring feature of this investigation, the thing that keeps pulling researchers back, is the gap between what the official record says and what it can prove.
The government did not lie about weather balloons for decades because the truth was too complicated. It lied because the truth was classified. That established precedent is the gravitational center of every theory that has ever surrounded this place. The persistence of Area 51 theories is not irrational. That is an important thing to understand. The people who believe or who seriously entertain the possibility that something extraordinary has been hidden at Groom Lake are not, on the whole, people who reject reality. Many of them are people who have looked carefully at the documented history of what the United States government has actually done in secret and drawn a reasonable conclusion. If they did that, what else might they have done? Consider the documented record. Operation Paperclip was a classified post-war program in which the United States government recruited former Nazi scientists, including some who had used forced labor in weapons development, and gave them new identities and positions in American research institutions. This was not a conspiracy theory. It was declassified and is a matter of historical record. MKUltra was a CIA program running from 1953 to 1973, in which the agency conducted non-consensual experiments on American and Canadian citizens, including the administration of LSD and other drugs, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture. It was denied for years. Senate hearings confirmed it. Operation Sea Spray involved the United States military releasing biological agents over the city of San Francisco in 1950 as part of a study of bacterial aerosol dispersal. The civilian population was not informed. Several people were hospitalized. One person died. These are not allegations. They are in the public record. When people ask whether the government might be concealing something extraordinary at a classified facility, knowing what the government has demonstrably concealed in the past, the answer is not obviously no.
There is also a deeper psychological dimension to this. Humans are pattern recognition machines. The ability to detect hidden causes behind visible effects was, for most of human evolutionary history, a survival skill. A rustling in the grass might be wind. It might be something predatory. The mind that assumed predator and fled survived more often than the mind that assumed wind and stayed. That same mechanism operates when people encounter gaps in official narratives. Where there is information missing, where records are redacted, where witnesses contradict each other, where official explanations change, the mind does not naturally settle on the truth is unclear. It reaches for the pattern that completes the picture. Conspiracy theories are, in this sense, a form of cognitive closure.
They are uncomfortable with ambiguity. They offer a complete narrative where the official version offers gaps. The irony of Area 51 is that the gaps in the official narrative are real. They are not fabricated by theorists. There are redacted documents. There are programs that remain classified. There are former workers who are legally bound by non-disclosure agreements. The ambiguity is genuine. And genuine ambiguity in a mind trained by decades of justified suspicion feels like confirmation. The Cold War added another layer. For 50 years, two superpowers competed in total secrecy across every domain: military, scientific, psychological, cultural. Both sides ran disinformation operations. Both sides planted false stories. Both sides built elaborate cover narratives around real programs. The idea that a government would construct a false story to conceal a true one is not paranoid speculation. It is documented Cold War standard practice. A generation raised in that environment, and the subsequent generations who inherited its cultural memory, developed a calibrated distrust of official explanations. Not irrational distrust, calibrated distrust.
That distrust did not disappear when the Cold War ended. It was simply redirected. Area 51, with its legally enforced secrecy, its 60-year denial, its camouflaged patrols and classified airspace, is the perfect object for that redirected distrust. Whether or not the distrust is warranted in this specific case is a separate question. The point is that the distrust itself makes sense. Here is what we know. Area 51 exists. It is a classified facility. It has been used to develop some of the most advanced aircraft in human history. It remains operational. Programs are being conducted there that have not been publicly disclosed. Here is what we do not know. We do not know the full scope of what has been, or is currently being, tested there. We do not know what is in the portions of the declassified documents that remain redacted. We do not know what the workers who are still bound by non-disclosure agreements would say if they were not. We do not know, with certainty, with physical evidence, with the kind of documentation that forecloses further questions, what Bob Lazar saw or did not see. We do not know, with the same kind of certainty, what crashed near Roswell in the summer of 1947. The rational explanation for all of it is consistent. It holds together. Advanced aircraft, military secrecy, Cold War psychology, human pattern recognition, filling in gaps that are genuinely there. That explanation is probably true. Probably. The word probably is small. But in a story that has lasted 70 years, sustained by the deliberate decisions of people in positions of power to withhold information from the public, in a country where those same people have been documented concealing things that were far stranger than advanced aircraft, probably is where the conversation has to live. The fence around Groom Lake is real. The signs are real. The guards are real. What they are protecting, all of it, the complete inventory, has never been put on the public record.
Maybe that record exists somewhere. Maybe it is in a drawer, in a building that doesn't appear on civilian maps, somewhere beyond the orange posts, somewhere in the restricted airspace above a dry lake in the Nevada desert. Maybe it is exactly what they say it is. Maybe it is something else. The signal stopped. It has never fully resumed. So what really happened at Area 51? The answer depends on what you choose to believe and on how much you trust the people who decided you didn't need to know.